Hello, my fireflies. It's just me today because Keith, instead of recording with me every Friday, as per usual, has gone on a writing retreat. Writing retreat. Writing retreat. And he has a very amazing milestone that I want to celebrate with him and with all y'all. He has, on that retreat, finished his first full draft of his play. It's something that you all would have been aware of as he has been doing this podcast. There's like an extra little process within a process where he's shared his journey about writing a play. And I just got this beautiful little video of him tapping away at his keyboard and this kind of beautiful cathartic breath of relief and emotion wash over him as he finished his piece. Just really, let's just all clap, 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 clap. Yay, Keith. So proud of you, buddy. It's really important. It's a really amazing thing. So that's why it's just me this week. And we'll be back to our regular scheduled program the week after. Actually, maybe not because I'm going on a series of away trips as well. So we might be introducing some bespoke little things for this, some in the can moments, pre recorded, non sequiturs. But this is very timely because Keith isn't here today because we didn't record so that he could go on a writing retreat. An amazing outcome from that, which leads me to what I wanted to just jump in here and share with my audience, which is about the creative process over product. Creativity and all of its endeavors rely on a few key things to keep us motivated, us as in artists and creative folk. But this is probably true of a lot of people, like sports, anything that's really requiring your mastery and your attention, constant attention towards something. I think these are important key points, and I've categorized them in 6 main topics, and that's the intrinsic motivation of yourself. What is your joy? Skill development, resilience and perseverance, mindfulness and presence, sustainability, and community. So let's dive into those 6 and flesh out what it is that I'm trying to share with y'all. You may or may not know this about me, but I talk about process over product a lot. And that's because I believe that the intrinsic motivation of an artist isn't the fame and acclaim and esteem and status of what it is that we create. It is the process that allows us as artists to find our joy and to find our passion in the work rather than aiming for whatever the final product is. Obviously, there's some caveats in there like commissions. We're very much worried about the final product because you're being paid for it. But even that, the end goal for the commissioner might be the end product, but the creative artist has chosen this path because they enjoy making art. And what enjoyment means is really subjective, but the learning and development that comes with being fulfilled by doing is way more important to me, to many, than what can be counted in the vault as you leave this world. As these are all the things that I've done, proof in the pudding. The hope is that you will find in life a Venn overlap of things that bring you joy and things that you're good at, and that in between those realms is the thing that you do. Um, and I consider art the thing that I do, even though I collect a paycheck for, 8 to 10 hours of work a day on this other thing. Um, just as good, but it's a means to an end. It pays my bills. It keeps me in good inspiration and challenge, but it ain't the reason that I'm on this earth. You know what I'm saying? I feel like the reason I'm here is to make art, which brings me to my second point, which is around skills. I think that there's a really important aspect for me around mastery. I have just emerged from the world wanting to master certain elements of art. And it's certainly true that through continuous practice, you get better. And again, the way that you value that skill attainment is through like knowing how many hours you put into that. I think there's something lovely about being naturally born with a talent, but there's something even more epic and moving about the sweat equity that goes into mastering yourself, and your capabilities. It's certainly true when you go into art school. You have to kind of go back to square one, basics, foundations. But even within those spaces, like the foundation of design, the foundation of painting, foundation of drawing, whatever it is, there's like this push for you to experiment and innovate, which is like another really important part of the learning process, to play, to make something yours. And that process of experimentation and innovation is how you come by your voice. And it's certainly for me the way that I've been able to connect with modalities of art that I might not necessarily um, use in my everyday world, but they've changed the way that I see the world. I think I've talked about this, how like through the foundation of design and the foundation of sculpture classes that I took in art school, they taught me how to exist in the world, how to be curious about my scale, the proportions of the houses and buildings and streets that I walk through. And that makes me a more conscientious and alive being. And that in turn makes me a better artist because I'm aware of what is going on in the world or even in my inner world. Um, Third point, resilience and perseverance. Obviously, there is a push for you to persevere through growth spurts, through um, where your skill level is at and what your output is at now versus where you want to be. I think the other part of that is like how you handle failure. I love that teaching and parenting um, thought leaders are talking about how we're doing our children a disservice by not pushing them into spaces where they're going to fail, by not preparing them for the richness of life that comes from like not doing great, from messing up, and from how you view failure. Innovators, inventors, failures are just one step closer to understanding how to do something. Okay, that's not how you do that. Well, then that rules that one out, doesn't it? So I think that there's like industries and types of creatives that are really geared towards viewing failure as a great opportunity. But for most of us, it creeps into kind of pain, not pleasure. For me, I'm trying to really rewire what failure means to me. I've gone through a world of no's. I think actors talk about this a lot. Like for every role they got like 300 um, declines. I haven't handled that particularly well when I've like gone into a gallery and asked if they would show my work, and they're like, "Well, I don't really think this is like for our audience, or this is great work, but not commercially viable for our community." And hearing no's in that content in that context is has kept me from really pushing outwards into who or how you would see my art. And, that's neither here nor there, but I suppose I have room to work in that area. Um, I also feel like I'm nailing perseverance. There's just like this essential long-term view that I have for my own art and for my own purpose in life. Like I'm finding meaning through every single year. I kind of have like a seasonal approach to what it is I'm doing, like series of artwork or series of what I'm producing like podcasts or songs or whatever it is. Like I feel like I have eras, and each of those are kind of just like the ever marching onward of time. And for me, it's a very fulfilling and gratifying thing to know that I'll always be making art. I- and with that comes my next point around sustainability. So creatives, for the most part, have issues around burnout and issues around the drive, the kind of fiery drive to keep producing. So while you're driving for your mastery, while you're driving for continuous improvement, while you're driving for the best approach, the best creative journey that you could be on, without some like adulting skills around time to rest, there is such a possibility for burnout. And I think that in and of itself is a tightrope walk because um maybe going into stress mode is kind of like what human beings and animals are built to do. Maybe we avoid stress when we could be leaning into it more. Um, and there's really no way to know. It's like trial by fire. Am I burning out or am I sloughing off and evolve? Am I a phoenix? Am I evolving into my next state through that burn? I think um, it's really important to realize that in this world, everything is fast paced. So slowing down is probably not going to be a bad thing for most people. Um, and I think that there's like a kind of cumulative stress pattern that happens when you're not resting. So go slow. um, my sixth and final point around the creative process is the importance of community and collaboration. I was raised in a family of activists and teachers and community folk and community minded folk. And I think they taught me that nothing happens outside of the context of what community you're in. And I think we make this mistake with some of our favorite artists a lot too. We think of them as just their work in isolation when in fact they're making art and bouncing off creative circles that they exist in. Um, and for every artist that you are inspired by, music, actor, writer, painter, whatever it is, they are also inspired by someone and should be able to kind of map out where some of their work is like satellite bouncing off of is so much fun. We do it all the time with music. We're like, oh, that sounds like, oh, that sounds like, oh, that reminds me of, and artists, visual artists do that as well. Um, and the importance of realizing who you're inspired by and realizing that art doesn't happen in a vacuum also plays into the process. So not just the outcome, but how did that person come by the end result? Who was holding their hand? Who were they bouncing off of? I do this all the time. I send people work in progress and ask them my opinion. I have like a few cultivated, trusted artist friends that are pivotal for me. And I'm sure that other people will know what I'm talking about when you're like, I'm working on something. What do you think? So here's to all of the people out there in the world cheerleading somebody on. You are a part of that end product. You are a part of the journey. And it's kind of funny because it's there's a lot of pressure on people to give good feedback, but you got to just remember that feedback is generative. So just start small. It could just be about maybe first vocalizing what you find interesting about the piece or asking somebody what is it you see right now. I mean, pulling that back even further, our eyeballs don't always see correctly. And so if you're stuck on a drawing or if you're stuck on something artistic visually, sometimes the best thing to do is to take a picture of it and look at it through the picture or to hold it up into a mirror. Your eye kind of reframes and you're able to kind of spot things that you weren't able to spot because our brains are just like always cognitively working to like make shortcuts. So we don't always see what's right there in front of us. So that other person can really help with that as well. And maybe it starts with just something really simple about like, oh, maybe, adding some more weight, some more shadow under that knee, or like, oh, I really love the tone of that sky on the right side. Maybe you can bring that color in from the left, or, gosh, this makes me feel hopeful. Um, how does it make you feel? There's so many ways that you can communicate with somebody, and that collaborative interplay is so important. Um, so that's my thought on that. I feel like there's really good examples of how all of these things um, flow into like real life. So like that, finding your joy, finding the thing that you're good at, and just enjoying the ride, developing your skills and mastering them, keeping resilient and persevering through all of those growth plateaus and hurdles, being mindful and present in the moment so that you are in flow, being sustainable, avoiding burning out, knowing when to rest, um, community, relying on your collective networking. That all of those I can absolutely attest are alive and vibrant in Catching Fireflies podcast. Not to get meta every chance I have the opportunity to, but it's true. I started out this podcast with Keith with like a real desire to be as in process as possible. And I also feel so psychologically safe to share with Keith what certain things are activating for me or challenging for me or like really resonating. And through playbacks and through, really safe, non egoic sharing of the process, I've been able to feel so held in this process, and I just don't feel any stress to make it anything but what it is and not to worry about what other people think. Um, I've said this before, but if one person finds, solace in our conversation or being present with them in their life, then I'm happy. This podcast has reached its purpose. The absolute joy of being kind to myself while still showing up has been formative, and I hope that you've enjoyed my little flow, my little diatribe monologue about, the creative process, and know that whatever you're doing, it's not about the fame and acclaim and status of what you're doing. It's about how this moment makes you feel. It's about leaving ripples behind. It's about the impressions that are in this nanosecond. It's about your memories. It's about the exchange. It's about the journey. And I hope that one day I will feel like I'm done because I've left enough beauty in the world. I want to leave my mark and let it be a beautiful mark. And that doesn't really matter what it is. It just matters that I've done it. So thank you. And I love you all. See you again soon.